Will I lose marks for not using a certain structure? How many analytical comments do I need to make per image? Do I really have to embed my quotations? Will I get penalised for going over the word count? All that and more in today's video. Hey, what's up guys, and welcome back to IGCSE Success. I hope you are all doing well. I know it's been a long time, but I'm back at school. Well, kinda. I'm at school teaching online. So the holidays are officially over, and it just means that I'm now super busy trying to yet again navigate this crazy world they call online learning. However, I am here with a new video because I know the October-November series is just around the corner. So I thought I'd jump on here really quickly and do a video all about the writer's effect question and the different ways that you can organize/sequence your response. So that's enough waffling from me. Let's get on with today's video. Okay guys, let's get the video started. So in this video, I am going to be specifically looking at paper 1 and the writer's effect question, which I believe is question 2D. Correct me if I'm wrong. And this video is very much going to be exploring the different ways you can organize your response. So I'm not going to be looking at how to annotate or how to analyze the images. I've got plenty of videos on my channel. I even think I've got a playlist specifically for the writer's effect question. So do check that out if you need a little bit of help in terms of how to analyze and how to approach this specific question. But before I explore the different ways you can approach the question in terms of how to structure or organize your response, I just want to answer some questions I often get on my channel, and I think it will be quite useful to have a short discussion about some of the approaches, some of the correct approaches, some of my opinions regarding how to approach this question and other things. So question 1, will I lose marks for not using the first structure or writing frame that I'm going to go through in this video? And the short answer is no, you will not lose any marks. You are and always will be marked on the quality of your analysis. You really can have the most, I guess, haphazard and clumsy writing repertoire, but as long as the examiner can make sense of your response and your analysis is top notch, you will be fine. Ultimately, do what works best for you. So question 2, do I have to start with the overall effect of the language? A sentence starter that I often advise you guys to use, and indeed my own students. Again, no you don't. However, I have always approached the writer's effect question in this way. Some teachers may argue that it is somewhat of a redundant phrase, but if you think about it, your goal is ultimately to, I guess, unpick what the writer is trying to achieve. If you establish that first and have this as a clear and concise sentence to front load your analytical paragraph, it's going to A, show the examiner you understand the text and what the writer is trying to achieve, and B, it is going to keep you nice and focused. So in my opinion, it's a win-win situation. Okay, so question 3 and 4 just came up as well. Let's start with question 3. My teacher uses a different approach. What should I do? Ultimately, and I get this question a lot, really ultimately your teacher knows best. We are pretty good at this teaching gig. If your teacher wants to approach any questions in a different way, that is completely fine. But it is your exam. Do what works best for you. There are a ton of different approaches to many of the questions. I know lots of teachers approach questions completely differently to me, and I am okay with that. As long as you are demonstrating the skills or hitting those learning objectives, you will be fine. Okay, number 4, and this is another question I get asked a lot. Do I have to mention the explicit meaning / dictionary definition? Yes and no. I personally don't drum this into my students because they focus way too much on explicit information. This question is really wanting you to understand how language works and to explore different layers of meaning. It's just another example of some teachers approaching questions in different ways. One would argue, though, that providing the explicit meaning is looking at one shade of meaning. However, you want to focus more on your analysis and not obsess over trying to define words. Really, your inference, your analysis, that is where you are going to get your marks from. Question 5. How many analytical comments do I have to make about each image? Again, approaches vary, but I get my students to write at least 2 things, if not more, about each image. If you've got a lot to say it. I think spending 30-ish minutes on this question is sensible, so it's as much as you can write in that time. Again, the focus is on language and exploring those different shades of meaning. To me, that is inviting you to write more than the suggested word count, but more on that a little bit later on. Okay, question 6. Will I get penalised for going over the word count? No, you won't. And if I had £1 for every time a beady-eyed viewer mentioned, "But sir, your response is way over the word count," I'd be very rich indeed. Here's the thing, with the exception of the summary question, do not threat about going over the word limit. You are not going to get penalised. However, if you do have the tendency to go round in circles and I guess waffle, it is probably best to stick to the suggested word counts. Can you get full marks by sticking to the word counts? Absolutely. Dividing your time sensibly between the questions and I guess not spending too long on one question is the most important thing to be thinking about. Question 7, we're almost at the end. So how do I know what images to select? Well, you'll be directed to 2 different paragraphs, and in each paragraph there will be more than 3 images you can select. If you aren't super confident when it comes to language analysis, you may want to select the 3 most obvious images. Cambridge, however, will appreciate candidates who select images that are perhaps a bit more challenging. I guess the golden rule is you don't want to be clutching at straws. Don't select images that contain words that are unfamiliar to you. Choose images that will allow you to say 2 different things about them. Okay, question 8, and I guess it links very much in with the nature of this video. Do I have to write using continuous prose? The writer's effect question is and always has been a reading question. There are no writing marks. As such, there isn't an expectation to write in continuous prose or an essay style format. However, I think it's a great skill to have. And I really discourage my students from using the quote analysis method or simply bullet pointing their ideas. I know some teachers use this method and that's completely fine. Personally, for me, writing is such an important skill to have in your toolbox, and I think as a teacher, I always try to encourage my students, irrespective of what set they're in, to write using continuous prose. I'll show you various different approaches to organising your response a little later on. The penultimate question, will I get marks for using a certain structure method? I've pretty much answered this question already, but just to reiterate, the answer is no. And the last question, do I have to embed my quotations? You don't have to embed your quotations. However, again, I think it's an important writing skill and it shows a certain level of mastery. Students that don't embed their quotations often end up selecting really long quotations, and they don't necessarily focus on the words that carry meaning. Plus, your response just reads so much better. Will Cambridge appreciate it? Probably. Will you get extra marks? Who knows? So I'm going to take you through the first method, and this is the method I often use in my writer's effect videos, and it's a 5-step method. So when you start your paragraph or you begin to analyze your first image, you start with step 1, and that is establishing what the writer is trying to achieve. And the sentence starter I like to get my students to use and have done for many years is simply the overall effect of the language creates an image of. Step 2 is some sort of transition phrase, and that usually is the writer begins by describing. Step 3 is using a short embedded quotation. Step 4 is what we call the zoom in technique. So that may well be zooming into a particular word and exploring the connotations, or it may well be zooming into a technique or simply the entire phrase as an image. Step 5 is your analysis, and this is where you want to say 2 things about the image. And in terms of your second and third image, you simply repeat steps 2 to 5. And some useful transition phrases to remember are: the writer then goes on to describe, and lastly, the writer describes. I really prefer this method because A, I want my students to be able to develop their essay writing skills, an important skill that will help them immeasurably down the line, and B, I just find that their analytical paragraphs are far more focused on the writer's intentions, and their analysis is always far more comprehensive too. Is it the right way? In my opinion, it's the sensible approach, but certainly not the only approach or the correct approach. So soon I'm going to show you 3 models using 3 different methods, but I just want to recap a typical writer's effect question. So of course you are directed to 2 different paragraphs, and you are given information after the ellipsis. And I've underlined that information, which is often overlooked, and it is really important because it gives you what you need to focus on. But first, I just want to look at 2 tips, and I want you to remember these tips. And I kind of broached this already, but it really is your job to unpick what the writer is trying to achieve. Use the key information, so the information I have underlined in red, to formulate your opening sentences, and it will keep you tightly focused. Even if some teachers see it as a redundant phrase, I think it's quite important. And tip 2, in your opening sentence, use an adjective or some sort of abstract noun when describing what the writer is trying to achieve. So let's take a look at that in action. So for the first bullet point, the overall effect of the language creates an image of the party's journey to the pool being, so a suitable adjective depending on what that journey is like. Upon reaching the pool, their experience turns into one of, and maybe a suitable abstract noun could go there. For the second bullet point, the overall effect of the language creates an image of the party's final moments at the camp being a suitable adjective, experience. So it really shows the examiner that you have understood the text. Really important, guys, to use that key information from both bullet points. So method 2 is simply choosing your 3 quotations and analysing those quotations underneath. I know that some teachers also just ask students to bullet point their ideas underneath each quotation. This is not necessarily wrong, but again, for me, I try to encourage my students to develop their writing skills, and I just find that using a writing frame or the method 1 approach, their responses are far more sophisticated and developed. I will show you this in action a little bit later on in the video. So method 3 is very similar to my first method, and I often use this method with students who just seem to struggle when embedding quotations, and that's absolutely fine because you are not going to get any extra marks. But again, it's a skill that I like to try and develop with my students. So it's virtually the same. The only difference is that step 3, they just insert the quotation. And again, I'll show you this shortly. Sorry, I forgot to say, and the transition phrases are slightly different as well. So the writer's first image is, the writer's second image is, the writer's third image is, and then students just insert the quotation. So before I show you models for each method, I've just pulled this paragraph from a really old first language English paper. I think it's from 2017, I could be wrong. Let's quickly read it. I've selected my 3 images already, and then I'll show you my annotations. So the text reads, ahead, the market was beginning to wake up. Jane enjoyed watching it at this time of day. It was like a large beast groaning in dismay at being prodded into life, its elongated body undulating and rippling as the stall holders pinned and adjusted fluttering awnings and canvas covers to their correct positions. Metal trolleys squealed in angry protest as their wheels careered crazily over the tarmac to be eventually butted against the stalls. Here they disgorged their contents, their items of sale, slipping and sliding across shiny surfaces. So I'm going to quickly go through my annotations, otherwise the models won't make much sense. So the first image, that simile, it was like a large beast groaning in dismay. I've just put there that it creates this image of the market being unpredictable, chaotic, potentially dangerous, uninviting, etc. That's simile, like a large beast. Terrifying. Image 2, its elongated body undulating and rippling. So we've got this sense, or there's this sense that the market is coming to life very slowly. It creates an image of the awnings being... That's definitely supposed to say set up. Apologies about that. Yeah, again, it creates this image of the awning stretching out almost like the wings of a beast. And that last image there, the personification, metal trolleys squealed in angry protest. It very much seems like these trolleys are reluctant to cooperate. It creates this cacophony of unwelcoming, harsh sounds. And there's this sense of rebellion. It kind of reminds me of that. I don't know if any of you guys have completed that first language English paper. I think the text was called The Magician, where the playing cards are rebelling, and it was very peculiar, but I absolutely loved it. So now let's see how we can take those annotations and put them into a paragraph using each method. So on your screen, you'll see method 1 and method 3. I won't read out method 3 because it's very, very similar. However, I have highlighted the differences. So let's read method 1 first of all, using the 5-step method with embedding quotations. So the overall effect of the language creates an image of the market slowly coming to life as if it is a sleeping animal reluctant to wake up. The writer begins by likening the market to being a wild beast groaning in dismay. The writer's simile here is particularly effective as it makes the market seem unpredictable and a potentially dangerous environment, one that is soon to turn into a chaotic scene. Additionally, it makes the market seem like it is a slow and challenging process to set everything up. The writer then goes on to describe the market's elongated body undulating and rippling. The writer's use of imagery here creates a scene of the market slowly coming to life. The awnings are being set up and are stretching out, covering the space as if they are the wings of a beast. Lastly, the writer goes on to describe the metal trolley squealing, literary present there, in angry protest. The writer's use of personification here is particularly striking as it makes the trolleys seem as though they are reluctant to cooperate. Furthermore, the cacophony of unpleasant sounds being made creates a sense of rebellion, as if the trolleys are trying to make it as difficult as possible for the market stall owners. Now let's take a look at method 2. So I won't read it out, but I will give you time to read what is on the screen. But essentially the biggest change is that this response starts with the quotation and then the analysis is provided underneath. Now, I have pretty much taken the analysis from my method 1 5-step paragraph. However, as mentioned before, when students adopt this approach, I just find that their analysis is often quite flat and they just don't explore those different layers of meaning as per the requirements of the question. Is this an incorrect way to approach this question? Absolutely not. Do what works best for you. And that's all from me today, guys. As always, if you have any questions or feedback, please do leave it below and I will see you again very soon. Until next time, bye-bye.